A change in policy at the border leads the state to step up enforcement efforts.
And Texas will continue to work relentlessly to defend our borders.
How the end of Title 42 is boosting efforts by state leaders and lawmakers to give Texas more control at the border. Billing errors, customer service complaints, auto pay problems. You've told our investigators about concerns with the state's tollway operations, the response when we took those complaints to lawmakers at the state capitol. Allegations of misconduct fuel a rare decision to kick a House member out. Meanwhile, a senator's dedication leads to a milestone to celebrate, how two very different votes made history at the Capitol.
Produced from the Capitol in Austin and airing statewide, this is the award-winning State of Texas.
Hello and thank you for joining us. I'm Josh Hinkle. Communities along the Texas border are facing a new surge of migrants after the end of Title 42 restrictions. In the days leading up to the change, state leaders made moves to prepare. On Monday, Governor Greg Abbott deployed a new unit he calls the Texas Tactical Border Force. Military aircraft carried equipment and hundreds of National Guard troops from Austin to the border.
They will be deployed to hot spots along the border to intercept, to repel, and to turn back migrants who are trying to enter Texas illegally.
The governor ordered a similar deployment last December when he sent troops to El Paso to seal off areas where people were crossing the border illegally. Border enforcement is supposed to be handled by the federal government, but Texas lawmakers are moving closer to creating a new state border protection unit. The House approved HB 7, which includes an amendment that would create a new agency under the Texas Department of Public Safety. The agency would oversee the Border Protection Unit. That unit would have authority to arrest unlawful border crossers, build border barriers, search vehicles, and more.
Our communities along the border are being overrun and overwhelmed. And it is our responsibility as a state to support the local communities. But we have to stop the illegal activity in between the ports of entry.
People from border communities protested at the Capitol before the vote. They say state leaders too often see their communities as places to police, not protect.
A lot of families down in the border are mixed status families. You know, the parents may be undocumented, their kids they were born here. So this would instill a lot of fear and anxiety in people that live in the border, and we don't want that.
The legislation would significantly expand the state's authority over the U.S. border. It still needs Senate approval. If it becomes law, it would likely face a challenge in federal court. For Insight, we're joined by Sandra Sanchez from Border Report. Sandra, you've been reporting from Brownsville all week. How has the situation changed there as the Title 42 policy winds down?
Hi, Josh. As you know, it's been a mad dash to the border in Brownsville, Texas for the past couple of weeks. Over 30,000 migrants, mostly Venezuelans, have crossed the Rio Grande from Matamoros, Mexico, into Brownsville. But as Title 42 sunset, we're not expecting to see the mass numbers turning themselves into Border Patrol, because now they face additional consequences for coming across illegally.
Instead of Title 42, we're seeing migrants being processed under the rules of Title 8. What's different for people crossing the border now?
Right now, they're having their biometrics taken. They're being scanned by these quick cell phone devices at this staging area. It's called Camp Monument. This is a pop-up processing facility that Border Patrol and CBP officials erected in 2 days to hold the numbers that they were seeing coming across. The migrants are staging on this dirt levee in Brownsville, and they're lining them up in tents, and they're taking all their information. Now, under Title 8, migrants will be sent back if they don't enter the United States under legal pathways. According to Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, there will be consequences, up to a 5-year ban for trying to re-enter the country, 20 years if you try to come back before that time, and they also face criminal prosecution. Some of the ways that they can legally enter mean that they have to apply through the CBP One app for an asylum interview at a U.S. port of entry. This app has had a number of glitches. A lot of migrants south of the border say they can't access it.
Earlier this past week, Governor Abbott made news when he deployed a new tactical unit of National Guard troops with orders to intercept and turn back migrants trying to enter Texas illegally. How have people along the border responded to that deployment, Sandra?
You know, it's been a big show of force. They have done practices in the streets. It's very visible that they are here. And I think a lot of that is deterrence to tell the migrants south of the border don't come. The DPS, the troops that have come down through Governor Abbott also have unspooled miles and miles of barbed wire and concertina wire along the Rio Grande. But, you know, I spoke to migrant advocates who have crossed and watched as migrants swim across, and then they help one another to climb under the wire, basically waiting for law enforcement to move out of that area, and then they dash under the wire and into the United States.
Yeah, you've been following organizations that work to help migrants, as you said. How are they handling the number of people crossing the border? I mean, it's a large number, so it's more than these individual cases.
Well, they're absolutely overwhelmed. In Brownsville, there's a welcome center. It's a city building, but it's a couple different NGOs that operate it. They can handle 1,000 people. Well, they've had almost double that amount. They need pallets of water and food and volunteers. They're constantly asking people to go to Sam's Club to buy new products for them. The Ozanam Center, a few miles away, is the only facility where migrants can spend the night for free, but it only has a capacity of 250. And as you know, that's the site where across the street there was at the bus stop, 8 men were mowed over by a vehicle. Many of those were migrants recently. And so many people are actually afraid to go to Ozanam. In McAllen, Texas, which is about 65 miles to the west, Sister Norma Pimentel tells me they can accommodate 1,500 people at the Humanitarian Respite Center in downtown McAllen each day. And then she's also asked other parish priests as well as organizations to open their doors to help excess flow of migrants.
We've also seen law enforcement and troops sent to the border. What's the long-term plan for communities to handle the growing number of migrant crossings?
Yeah, you know, like I said, they're making these preparations through parks and other NGO facilities, and they're also declared several disaster declarations that will open them up for federal funds, state funds. Right now, it's kind of a wait and see. You know, everyone doesn't know whether they will continue to come across or whether the migrants will switch to an evasion tactic where they will try to not encounter law enforcement. Right now, what we've been seeing for weeks is just groups turning themselves in. And I suspect that once they understand Title VIII has serious consequences, that they're going to switch and perhaps go to areas where there isn't border fencing, where there aren't as many enforcement troops, and try to cross.
All right, Sandra Sanchez from Border Report, thank you very much. Sandra's part of our reporter team covering stories and issues along the southern border. You can see the complete coverage online now at borderreport.com. Hugs and tears of joy after a vote to advance gun control legislation. Why the celebration did not last long. History made in 2 separate votes at the Capitol. The stories behind lawmakers who made a lasting mark on the legislature this week in very different ways. Digging deeper into problems with the state's toll operations. Now we're taking your complaints to the Capitol. Lawmakers look for solutions using your TXTAG troubles as fuel for policy change.